Magic the Gathering is a game built on the principles of iteration and experimentation. Across the 33-year history of the game, the design decisions that have made it to print have run the gamut from brilliant to boneheaded, to everything in between. Within this incredible range, it is difficult to find any aspect of the game's design that could really be considered underexplored, except one: 4-color combinations. The 33-year history of Magic is flush with 2, 3, and even 5-color designs, each with its own rich identity and firmly established gameplay experience. 4-color cards, by comparison, are woefully sparse. Of the over 30,000 cards in Magic the Gathering, just 17 of them are 4 colors. Unlike their 2, 3, and 5-color counterparts, few, if any, of the 5 4-color combinations have anything resembling clearly defined identities or combination-specific mechanics. They've hardly been given the chance to establish any, as there has never been a 4-color focused set, or even a set with a light 4-color theme. Why is this the case? Given their otherwise proven track record of being willing to try anything, why are Magic designers so reluctant to tread on this particular ground? Is there something about 4-color combinations that mark them as off-limits? To answer these questions and more, we'll need to travel back to the very beginning of multicolored card design. We'll examine the 4-color cards that do exist and identify what did or did not work about them. And perhaps through this effort, we will come to understand the specific constraints that prevent Magic from ever truly delving into 4-color design. This video is brought to you in part by Manapool, the best place to buy and sell your cards online. Manapool offers lower fees, a superior cart optimizer, and robust customer service. Manapool does not charge a commission on shipping costs, only the standard 2.9% plus 30-cent credit card processing fee. So if you're sick of shipping issues and costs with other online marketplaces, you should definitely give Manapool a try. Just go to manapool.com/TCC now to begin shopping on Manapool. Among other things, I have the commander decks from our recent episode of Shuffle Up and Play available for sale. Charlie's complete commander deck can be purchased for only $32 on Manapool, so if you like, you can get it delivered right to your door with just one click. Or just shop and sell individual cards as you like. Thank you, Manapool, for sponsoring this video. One of the original purposes of the color pie was to establish the relationship between the colors. Each color's 2 adjacent colors on the pie are known as allies, whereas the 2 colors across from it are its enemies. Allied color pairs, from both a philosophical and mechanical standpoint, were meant to work better together than enemy color pairs. Though designers would eventually discard this notion that began treating all 10 2-color pairs equally, the concept of ally and enemy colors had a significant influence on multicolored design in those early days. The first set to have any multicolored cards whatsoever was Magic's 3rd expansion, all the way back in 1994, Legends. Legends was a set with many firsts, as it was also the first set to establish the eponymous Legendary supertype, which is something that would go on to spawn Magic's most popular format. But what's most remarkable about Magic's first multicolored set is that it didn't just introduce 2 color combinations, but 3 color ones as well. That said, in terms of laying the groundwork for multicolored card design, the Legends of Legends left a lot to be desired. Though all of the set's 55 inaugural legendary creatures are legendary, 11 of them, a full 20% 90% are completely vanilla. What's more, many of the designs that aren't vanilla still aren't particularly indicative of what their color combinations' identities would eventually become. And of course, in accordance to how the designers viewed the color pie at the time, every single gold card in the set was either an allied color pair or an ally-focused 3-color shard. There's not a single enemy pair or wedge in the entire set. But for all its shortcomings, Legends still served as a valuable proof of concept in the gold card design space. And it wouldn't take long for Magic to better refine what it meant for a card to be multicolored. While Legends signaled the beginning of gold cards being a tool in Magic's toolbox, it would be a bit longer before any of the various 2 or 3 color combinations felt like they had established identities. There was plenty of experimentation throughout the late 90s and early 2000s, but it wasn't until 2005 brought us one of the game's most influential blocks of all time that the 10 2-color pairs really came into their own. Ravnica, City of Guilds, an entirely new setting built from the ground up around each of the 10 2-color combinations. Ravnica firmly established each 2-color pair's identity while providing the requisite support to construct an entire set around them. This block would also provide Magic's very first and ill-fated attempt at 4-color design. But more on that in just a moment. From a historical standpoint, Ravnica Block's primary significance was defining what it meant to be a 2-color card. The same would soon happen for half of the 10 3-color combinations. Though Invasion drew up a kind of blueprint for the mechanical identities of the 5 ally shards in the year 2000, it would take another 8 years until an expansion set truly cemented what these color trios were in players' minds. Shards of Alara introduced players to the worlds of Esper, Jund, Bant, Grixis, and Naya, firmly establishing not only the aesthetics for each shard, but their names as well. It would take nearly a decade, but the same would ultimately occur with the enemy-focused tricolor wedges, a group of color combinations considered under-supported until Khans of Tarkir gave them firm identities. But what about 4-color combinations? Well, at no point in Magic's history has there ever been a set designed around 4-color combinations, nor has any setting ever really attempted to codify those combinations' aesthetics or identity in any meaningful sense. As a result, there are hardly any 4-colored cards at all. 2-color gold cards appear in every set nowadays, with Theros introducing the concept of a signpost card for draft. 3-color cards are rarer, but do occasionally appear even in sets not designed around them. And sets that are designed around these 3 colors still show up every few years. On the other hand, there are 17 4-color cards in Magic, total. Why is this the case? Well, let's take a look at what those 4-color cards actually look like and see if we can unpack their mechanical identities and the difficulties inherent to designing around them. On top of the other ways in which it revolutionized Magic, the aforementioned Ravnica block was also the game's first foray into the realm of 4-color design. Dissension gave us a cycle of 4-colored Nephilim: Glint-Eyed Nephilim, Dune Brood Nephilim, Ink Treader Nephilim, Witch Maw Nephilim, and Yor Tiller Nephilim. Phew! It says a lot about the state of 4-color design that this mouthful of a naming convention is also the closest thing we have to a codified name for each respective 4-color combination. Imagine telling your friends you're building a Yor Tiller Timna Crom deck. All 5 of these designs are soupy messes because they're each trying to represent a different soupy mess of colors. For most of these cards, it is impossible to point to what each of its colors is bringing to the table mechanically. phonetically. They just read as sludge, like what you'd get when you mix a bunch of different sodas at a soda fountain together. Not only do none of these designs particularly evoke their respective color combinations, they hardly even feel four-color at all. Ink Treader Nephilim, for instance, could literally be a mono-red card. In fact, it basically is a mono-red card. And that card's name is Zada Hedron Grinder. And the card's largely unmemorable aesthetics don't do much to combat this impression. The most notable of them is Witchmaw Nephilim, which is literally just a ripoff of No Face from Spirited Away. So what went wrong here? Well, the Nephilim were what's called bottom-up, or mechanics-first designs. The intention from the outset was to create a cycle of four-color designs, unified under an overall aesthetic banner, rather than creating each Nephilim first and then basing its mechanics on its flavor. Unfortunately, this runs into a fundamental issue with how four-color combinations actually distinguish themselves as unique entities. Because it's so difficult to summarize four distinct colors into one coherent identity, four color combinations are typically defined instead by what's absent. In other words, the void left by their missing color is what distinguishes them. In practice, however, this is extremely difficult to evoke with a bottom-up or mechanics-first design. In a 2013 article discussing the Nephilim's absence from the set Dragon's Maze, Mark Rosewater said this: "The major problem is that it's nearly impossible to design four-color cards that actually feel like four-color cards. Why? Because there are just too many colors fighting for attention to get a feel. The biggest thing about four-color cards is the missing color, but you can't design about what's missing, as that's the only thing the card isn't allowed to have color pie-wise." Essentially, the Nephilim were created through an earnest attempt to synthesize aspects of each of their four colors into one unified mechanical design. But the result was an incomprehensible cycle of unremarkable, barely distinguishable cards. It's no surprise that the Nephilim proved to be deeply unpopular among the Magic player base at the time of their introduction. When Magic made its return to Ravnica in 2013's Return to Ravnica, the Nephilim were nowhere to be found. Something had shifted by 2013, however. After all, if they were still as disliked and forgettable then as they were when they first released, why would Mark Rosewater need to write an article defending their absence? Well, Return to Ravnica was just 2 years removed from the release of the original Commander set back in 2011. The format was booming, and many Commander players were already asking why there weren't any available four-color commanders. For whatever reason, perhaps in keeping with their lack of distinguishing characteristics, the Nephilim were not legendary. They were therefore ineligible as commanders without a playgroup's Rule 0 amendment. This left players looking to build four-color commander decks out in the cold. Finally, in Commander 2016, Wizards caved to these players' demands and printed the game's first four-color cards in 10 years. Rather than being bottom-up designs, however, these cards were top-down, evoking their four-color aspects primarily through their flavor rather than their mechanics. As it turns out, this was an excellent decision, and one that made them feel both more coherent as Magic cards and more distinctly four-color. And in so doing, Magic's designers cracked the code on how to design around what's missing from a four-color card's identity. Lacking white's order and structure, we have Idris, Maelstrom Wielder, a mage acting as a conduit for Lara's volatile storm of raw mana. Lacking blue's reason and erudition, we have Saskia, the Unyielding, the only survivor of a massacred village, leading a loyal host in a quest for revenge. Lacking black's ambition and ego, we have Kyranos and Tyro of Miletus, joint heroes fighting to overthrow tyranny and establish an everlasting peace. Lacking red's passion and impulse, we have Atraxa, Praetor's voice, a hollow servant created by Phyrexia and bound to its will. And finally, lacking green's naturalism and traditionalism, we have Brea, Ethereum's shaper, a rogue artificer with the ability to create an unstable and violent metal. These 5 creatures proved immensely popular, and it's not hard to see why. Unlike the soupy Nephilim, each of these designs is both distinct and identifiable with their respective color combinations. If divorced from their names and backgrounds, these creatures' abilities might not necessarily read as being 4-color abilities, but it's because the flavor is so resonant that these designs work as 4-color designs. To an extent, this is a lesson Wizards would learn from, and all future attempts at making 4-color cards adopted this flavor-first approach. Unfortunately, it turns out the flavor space that these combinations exist in is still quite narrow. To date, 3 of these color combinations still haven't received any cards since Commander 2016, and a 4th has only gotten 1 in Atraxa Grand Unifier, which is just another version of a character that already exists in 4 colors. Only the non-black slice of the color pie has seen significant additions to its roster, and I suspect that's only because it's pretty easy to take a heroic character and slap every color but black onto it. Still, after the relative failure of the Nephilim, this was absolutely a massive step in the right direction, and one that proves that there is design space around 4-colored cards for Wizards to explore, should they so choose. So, if a framework does exist for making coherent 4-color designs, even if that framework is top-down, why hasn't Wizards tried their hand at making a 4-color set? Surely it wouldn't be that difficult to look at what worked for Commander 2016 and apply similar flavor concepts to a set of 4-colored factions, right? Well, in this case, the difficulty is one of function rather than form. And ultimately, it's not even the 4-colored cards themselves that are the main problem. The primary factor separating a mainline Magic expansion from a supplemental product like Commander is that mainline sets have to be draftable, which means the entire set has to be designed with the limited environment in mind. This is, of course, already challenging on a baseline level, but the exact degree of difficulty of doing so depends heavily on the set's overall design concepts, including, and especially, its color groupings. The typical formula where players are guided towards 2-color draft archetypes, with pockets of cross-synergy filling in the gaps, obviously works quite well for 2-colored sets. But when more colors get thrown into the mix, things get a lot messier. Think about what the mana base looked like for your last pre-release deck. Aside from maybe a couple of tap lands, odds are it was almost entirely basic lands, right? The biggest challenge for designing 3-colored sets for Limited is that it is very difficult for a draft deck to have a mana base that supports a full 3 colors. A 3-color deck needs a lot of fixing in order to reliably cast all of its spells on time, and it is very difficult to include that required amount of fixing in a limited environment without warping constructed. Now, it is possible to thread this needle, but even then, the fantasy of playing 3-color decks in Limited isn't always fully realized. Tarkir Dragonstorm, for example, was an excellent draft set with plenty of fixing, but most decks were either 2 colors with a splash or full-on 5-color soup. And when attempts at designing for 3 colors fail, they fail pretty hard. Streets of New Capenna was largely disliked by the player base, as the draft environment revolved almost entirely around a few focused 2-color decks, with many of the 3-color archetypes considered completely unplayable. And if these examples show that it's hard to enable 3-color decks, a 4-color limited environment would need to provide even more fixing for its factional mechanics to be even remotely functional. Furthermore, the need to limit power level to avoid warping constructed means that this fixing would largely take the form of mana rocks and tap lands, which either overwhelmingly favor a slower and more controlling strategy, or sets these slower decks up for failure if more streamlined 2-color aggro decks are too powerful. That's not to say we'll never get a 4-colored set, of course. If there's one thing play design loves, it's tackling design challenges that seem completely unfixable, as demonstrated by Storm-Scale Scion's defiance of its namesake rule against printing the Storm mechanic into Standard. That said, given all the challenges inherent to doing so, attempting to fix the 4-colored problems for an entire Premiere set is a huge risk to take, and not one I expect will be attempted anytime soon. All hope is not lost for 4-colored fans, however, because there's another option at WotC's disposal to experiment with 4-colored designs without risking an entire set, and it is the same option that proved so successful a decade ago: Commander products. This probably does not come as a huge surprise. In fact, we've seen a 4-colored Commander deck as recently as just now, with Marvel superheroes giving us the Fantastic Four. And the upcoming set Reality Fracture has already revealed a 4-color Jace precon. Commander products in general, and individual precons in particular, avoid many of the problems I've previously outlined with regards to 4-color design. They don't need to be draftable. Their standalone nature makes them low risk and low investment, and they are often designed with a flavor-first approach that allows them to really feel 4-color. This does mean we'll likely only see new 4-color designs when it makes sense for whatever character or theme they want to design around. We may never know what it looks like when an entire world is designed with 4-color factions in mind. But top-down 4-color cards will surely remain a tool in the Magic design team's toolbox. It's only a matter of time until these 5 factions feel nearly as defined as the other color combinations in Magic the Gathering. I hope very much you've enjoyed this deep dive into the history and design of 4-color Magic the Gathering cards. If you'd like to see similar videos, such as our exploration of red and white in Lorehold, black and white in Silverquill, and why red and blue may just be the most powerful 2-color combination in all of Magic, or if you'd just like to explore the history of banding, you can watch those videos here or linked in this video's description.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
What's up? It's Shuffle Up and Play, and today it's the Cool Prof episode in which I have brought a 5th augment deck of Cool Prof cards. Whenever you play a non-token creature, a Cool Prof card will attach to that creature, and then you read the card to explain what happens.
Hit mechanic stickers?
I put the hat on my twink and pass.
Okay, I am going to cast Ms. Bumbleflower.
All right. Boom.
What? This creature has cumulative upkeep pay $1.
That's a Doom Blade.
Wow, I didn't know the channel was in that much trouble.
Airplane mode. Whenever your phone rings, this creature deals 1 damage to you. No one calls me, so suck it.
Wait.
I'll tell you the truth. I'm more scared of this Eidolon than I am of that thing. Yeah. Play 3 visits.
This guy commanders.
This is a ball knower right here.
Wait, I thought it was called Booster Blitz. What a conundrum.
There's a sub-game.
It's clockwise.
Rebel, you pro.
You want to do it again?
It would start with me, go Prof, then Rebel.
Why does it have to start in a certain place?
Oh, clockwise from where?
Rebel.
I don't know.
Rebel takes damage.